Would you be the jerk if you forced your son to buy a more appropriate swimsuit? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for reminding my sister-in-law she isn't a mother on Mother's Day? My brother Miles lost his wife Sarah 4 years ago. He has a son, Eric, 11. Miles married his wife Josie about 18 months ago, and yes, she's trying the whole second mom thing. Eric is in grief therapy, and Miles is being better about pushing Josie on Eric than he could be, but he also hasn't been as respectful of the fact that Eric doesn't see her as a mother as he could be. Sarah unfortunately didn't have sisters, so I'm the woman closest to her age in Eric's life, and I'm trying to be there for him as much as I can. We're very close. Not that I'll ever take Sarah's place, no one will, but he knows if there's ever something he doesn't want to talk to his dad about, that my home is always open to him. So for Mother's Day, Eric wanted to visit Sarah's grave and then come to Mother's Day lunch with me and my family. Miles agreed to this plan initially, but the day before, he canceled on Eric's behalf, saying that he and Josie thought it would be best that Eric spend the whole day with them, since Eric should show appreciation to Josie on Mother's Day. I argued with Miles, and eventually Miles said I could come by and see Eric and get the gift he'd gotten me, but that he wanted Eric to stay with him and Josie. When I went over to the house, Eric gave me some flowers and a small candle, and we were talking outside, and he said he had his phone taken away because he had refused to say or do anything for Josie for Mother's Day. Imagine punishing a child because he doesn't love you. I didn't say anything to Eric, but when I was leaving, I said to Miles that I thought he was doing untold damage to his son by bullying him into pretending he cares about Josie. Josie said it wasn't bullying for wanting Eric to participate in celebrating her on Mother's Day. So I looked at her and said, "Josie, whose mother are you?" Josie had a miscarriage a few months ago, so this hit her pretty hard. I'm not going to lie and say I didn't realize this would upset her, but frankly, she isn't Eric's mother, and she can't make up for wishing she was by making the day harder for him. Josie burst into tears and started shouting at me, and Miles told me to just take Eric with me because obviously this whole thing has been a failure. Miles is saying I went too far reminding Josie she isn't a mother, but I feel like someone had to, because she was acting like she's entitled to the title when the child doesn't feel that way. If she was having a hard day and wanted to memorialize what she's been through, then that's her business, but Eric shouldn't be bullied into a pantomime because of her grief. I think Opie's not the jerk here because it's pretty obvious the "whose mother are you" wasn't really meant to be a slight thing just to make them feel bad, but to point out you're not Eric's mother. Forcing this kid to try to love you or see you as a mom when you're not is almost never going to make that kid actually do so. Napalm Axolotl wrote, "Can we just give a blanket judgment for Mother's Day here? Every stepmom who thinks her feelings matter way more than the child's feelings is a jerk. Every single one. Everyone who defends the child's feelings and grief and choices and basically treats them like a human being rather than a child-shaped object is correct. You might have been a little harsh because of the miscarriage, but frankly it was justified by how badly Josie and Miles were behaving, not the jerk." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, why not hit those like and subscribe buttons down below? That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for not feeling sorry for my wife when exactly what I told her would happen happened? We have an old house. There's a 5-inch wide horizontal ledge on the stairway to the basement. She likes to store stuff there. I've been telling her for years it's a bad idea. Whenever I go downstairs to do laundry or put away groceries in our pantry, I make sure that ledge is empty. She always says that it's just handy and that she always means to clean it up. I find all kinds of crap there. Bottles, jars, open boxes of garbage bags, lighter fluid, you name it. She came in from the backyard where she was gardening to use the bathroom. On her way out, she went downstairs for something. I heard her fall and then scream. After we got home from the hospital where they reattached her toe, I asked her why she thought that leaving her garden shears there was a good idea. She says that I'm being a jerk for saying, "I told you so." I didn't, I just asked her why she did it. I feel very bad that she got injured. I feel terrible that she feels dumb for leaving a heavy, sharp object where it could fall easily. I feel crappy that I didn't see them in time to put them somewhere safe. None of that means what happened wasn't entirely predictable and entirely her fault. Once again, for the cheap seat, I did not say "I told you so." Am I the jerk for asking about her thought process? Obviously, I'm willing to believe OP on them having asked that question not from an area of I told you so or trying to rub it in, but more so an easily misconstruable question of just trying to process their thought process behind putting that thing there. Almost more of like a reinforcement thing, like them asking that isn't actually because they want a true answer. It's just to make the other party think about it and reinforce how silly it is just to leave that item there. It's one of those things where you think about it and you realize, I really spared 45 seconds and almost lost a toe over it. Impossible Rain 4727 wrote, "Not the jerk. Your question is a tad stupid. Obviously, she was being thoughtless and or lazy. While she's unfortunate to have suffered this accident, better it be the person who caused the unsafe situation than someone innocent. Her negligence could have seriously injured or killed someone. While she was the one who was hurt this time, it could have easily have been you walking down the stairs. I can only hope that you do not have children that could have gotten hurt instead of her. She should feel dumb. She should feel embarrassed. She should learn a lesson from this." Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my husband's grandparents that they shouldn't have surprised their grandkids if they wanted their Mother's Day lunch to go better? Sunday, my husband, 25-year-old male, and his two siblings, 27-year-old male and 22-year-old female, were planning to spend the day with their maternal side of the family, but their paternal grandparents asked if they could do something too. So we arranged a lunch for them to get together. It was an earlier lunch, so they could make it in time for the other things they had planned with the maternal side. The thing they were not expecting was their dad and his wife, who they are no contact with, to be there. Their grandparents surprised them with this after we all got there, and it was awkward as heck. It was also my third time meeting their dad. Their dad's wife kept watching them and trying to get their attention. They ignored her. Then she outright asked where her happy Mother's Day wishes were, which they ignored. She asked about gifts and tried to claim the gifts all three bought for their grandmother. Brother-in-law told her nothing was for her and why would she ever think they'd get her anything. Grandfather-in-law tried to calm things down by talking over everyone, but it didn't work because their dad's wife just got louder. She started listing off all the gifts she'd received from them when they were kids and living with her and her husband, father-in-law. Sister-in-law told her they weren't ever actually from them and that their dad had bought them and added their names, but it was nothing to do with them. Their dad's wife then turned on sister-in-law and blamed her, saying she manipulated the boys to feel the same as she did and it was wrong because they were all young enough when their birth mother died for them to embrace and benefit from a new mother. My husband laughed at that and said sister-in-law was the youngest and only 5 when their mom died, and their dad went out to replace her ASAP because he was pathetic and didn't want to raise his own kids. He said she clearly thought sister-in-law was a very, very manipulative and intelligent 5-year-old to believe that, and pointed out she was very quick to always blame sister-in-law for things. Brother-in-law added that they were never going to accept some random person who came in months after their mom died and attempted to assert her dominance over them as a mother. He said he didn't care if their dad was unfair to her as well, because she was downright evil to try and replace their mom. It got so heated that I suggested to my husband that we just move on. Later that night, my husband's grandparents called me to apologize and said they had no idea how things went so wrong. This is where I might be the jerk, because I told them they shouldn't have surprised their grandkids by inviting father-in-law and his wife like that if they wanted the lunch to go better. I told his grandparents that they know my husband and his siblings are no contact, and no love for their dad or his wife, and they know they used to fight all the time. His grandparents told me it shouldn't need to be a surprise, and I should understand their POV better. They also told me it's rude to rub it in after they apologized to me. Am I the jerk? In my eyes, OP's not the jerk. I don't see any lies with what they said. And hey, I'm willing to bet you're darn sure never going to see a situation pop up like this again. Unless they're super entitled or very, very incapable of learning from negative experiences. Armoa wrote, not the jerk for stating facts, and hopefully helping avoid any future surprises. Especially when they claim they didn't know how things had gone so wrong. But out of curiosity, have they actually apologized to their grandchildren? The people they actually ambushed? This next story is, am I the jerk for not asking if any of the kids have any allergies before buying them ice cream? My 18-year-old male, little sister, 13, was hanging out with 3 of her friends yesterday. She called me asking if I could buy some ice cream for them. It's really hot in our country right now, so I said, okay, be there in half an hour. Bought 4 ice cream bars, all vanilla caramel almond. The issue is that one of them, let's call her Amy, 13-year-old female, is allergic to almond, so she had to watch the others eat ice cream while she didn't get any. Amy's dad, it was Amy's house, said that I should have asked first if anyone was allergic to anything, and now Amy has to watch her friends eat ice cream without having any to eat herself. He called me inconsiderate for not checking. Update, thanks for your comments everyone. In hindsight, I was pretty stupid to just pick my favorite flavor for them without asking, especially when it contains a common allergen. I asked my sister to call Amy and apologize to her for not checking before asking her what flavor she'd like for their next hangout. She said that it's no big deal and that Oreo ice cream would be nice. Those are available at the supermarket too, so I told her I'm going to get that for her next time. As for my sister's other 2 friends, they enjoyed the flavor I got them, but I'll make sure to ask next time before getting any food or snacks, in case they prefer something else or are allergic to something. I will also avoid buying nuts for groups of people. So I'm going to err on the side of not the jerk because I think it's a pretty innocent mistake, especially considering if you're going to ask somebody to buy ice cream for you like that, usually you specify what kind. Like if you've ever asked anybody if they could get you some food from somewhere, you've almost always specified what kind of food you want, right? If somebody said, oh, I'm gonna make a run to Ben & Jerry's and you say, oh, can you get me some? You're almost always going to have that interaction of, okay, what flavor do you want, right? It was an innocent mistake and I'm sure next time, OP will be a lot more mindful of asking for something like that. Okay, Bullfrog5830 wrote, not the jerk, they're 13. She should have spoke up when your sister called. She needs to learn how to speak up for herself. Harry Rambutan added, agreed. Even when my kids were pretty little, I'm talking 5 or 6, their friends with allergies would announce the fact solemnly as soon as they arrived for a playdate or birthday party. Many would present me with a detailed list of instructions from their parents, sometimes also their EpiPens, and one kid, celiac, always showed up with their own carefully packed meals and snacks. 13 is absolutely old enough to speak up. Our next story is, am I the jerk for walking out of my mom's house on Mother's Day even after she lost my sister not too long ago because she was disrespectful to my wife? My sister died 6 months ago, so yesterday was my mom's first Mother's Day after the loss of one of her kids, and the kid who made her a mom at that. I, 24-year-old male, wanted to make it special for mom, and my wife was more than happy to help me. Even though Mother's Day is rough for her because she was not given a good or even a tries her best mother, so the day is a painful reminder that my wife didn't ever have a healthy maternal figure in her life. Father's Day is similar, but she never knew her father and never had a good father figure either. My wife still wanted to help make mom's first Mother's Day without my sister special. We went around getting all my mom's favorite things, favorite flowers, ice cream, chocolate, a reservation for her favorite restaurant, a scarf in her favorite color because scarves are her favorite thing ever. We also compiled a little video of my sister. Mom talked about Mother's Day being more difficult without her and wanting to watch some home movies of her, so we did something special with that. My wife also helped me recreate a dance I did for my mom on Mother's Day when I was a kid because she talked about that a lot. Basically, it was just meant to show how much we love her and help her through this not-so-easy Mother's Day. My wife played a very big role. She even suggested bringing breakfast to her and serving her breakfast in bed. Yesterday morning came, we made her favorite breakfast and brought it to mom at her and dad's. After she came out of her room is when things went to crap. Mom saw my wife and asked what she was doing there and didn't look like she wanted my wife there. It surprised me because my wife was with us last year too. Mom was grumbling and hostile to my wife. I told mom that we'd planned some special things for her. This didn't change anything, and she told me she didn't want my wife there. Then she told my wife she had no right to intrude and why would she want her there. My wife said she was sorry, she hadn't wanted to upset her. I told mom that she was being rude and it wasn't right to take her sadness out on my wife. Mom said she just wanted us to spend Mother's Day as a family, and I told her my wife is family. My mother grumbled and dad asked me to lay off. My wife said it was fine, but then mom started on my wife a few minutes later and after she'd opened most of her gifts and she said she was tired of her being here and her own mother hadn't even wanted her, so why did she think she'd be welcome? That was too much for me. I told mom I should have left earlier, but I wanted to be understanding and supportive, but she had crossed the line and I was done. That she could celebrate Mother's Day without us. My wife and I left. She felt bad and I told her not to, and I apologized for not leaving sooner. She told me I didn't need to leave and I told her I did. Mom and Dad both texted me countless times yesterday saying I should go back, and how could I abandon Mom after she lost my sister? Am I the jerk? It's one thing if they're kind of acting out and they are grumpy and upset and they don't want people that aren't part of their immediate family around. But for her to go all the way to say, your mother didn't even want you, so why do you think you'd be welcome here? That is some seriously nasty stuff to say to somebody. And I think OP was absolutely right in standing up for their wife in that situation. That is a line that has been unbelievably crossed at that point, and honestly is such a vile thing to say to somebody that it might be damaging for a while for OP and their mom's relationship, especially if the mom can't own up to it and tries to victim complex. Share the Wine wrote, "Not the jerk. Your mother's grief doesn't give her a blank check to be absolutely vile to other people. While fresh, I'd write down the top 3 or 5 awful things she said and send them back to her and your dad, and the boundary would be that until Mom gets therapy, understands why her behavior was way over the line, sincerely apologized and actually acted motherly, that you would not be seeing her, as your job is to love and protect your wife above all others." Seriously, the things your mom said to your wife were just awful. Our next story is, am I the jerk for making my plane seat neighbor uncomfortable? I, 40-year-old male, just got off a long flight, the kind where even the comfiest seats feel like torture racks. Now, I'm a big dude, not yet booked 2 seats level, but enough for plane seats to be absolute heck. Booked a window seat, figured the extra space would help. The flight attendant assigns a woman to the middle seat. Nice person, we exchange greetings, no problem. Here's where things get tricky. Nature called a couple of times during the flight, and let's just say squeezing by in that cramped space is an exercise in contortionism at the best of times. The woman in the middle seat politely refused to get up whenever I needed to use the restroom. The lady in the aisle seat was very accommodating and would get up anytime either I or the lady in the middle needed to get up. Now I get it. Nobody wants some sweaty dude brushing past them. I tried my best to minimize contact, literally sucked in my gut and held my breath like I was underwater, but even with all the contorting, there was some unavoidable brushing past. At the end of the flight, the woman makes a passive-aggressive comment about personal space and how uncomfortable I made her feel throughout the flight. Honestly, I felt terrible. Didn't mean to make her feel that way, but what else was I supposed to do? Hold it for 8 hours? Ask her to physically get up? Since she repeatedly didn't get up and indicated I should squeeze by, I had no reason to think she was too bothered by it. Am I the jerk for making her uncomfortable? OP's absolutely not the jerk, and honestly, I think a lot of people would speak up in a situation like that and simply clap back saying, and most people actually are considerate and get up and get out of the way when the person in the window seat needs to get out to go use the restroom. How uncomfortable OP made you feel throughout the flight? You want OP to be uncomfortable by holding it for 8 hours? Aren't you the holy saint of personal space and consideration? Happy Trifler wrote, "Not the jerk. You're nicer than me." My response would have been, "Ma'am, you refused to get up, so my only options were to either encroach on your personal space or pee on you. I'm sorry you feel like I chose the wrong option." This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my sister nobody needs to give her anything for Mother's Day? My 27-year-old female sister, 25-year-old female, had a miscarriage 6 or 7 months ago. It was very early. She had a positive pregnancy test, but then a couple days later tested negative and had her period. My husband, 29-year-old male, and I just had our first baby who's now 3 weeks old. For Mother's Day, we all went to my parents' house to celebrate. My sister and I both brought our mom gifts, and my mom also got me flowers and chocolate to celebrate my first Mother's Day. I think it's also worth noting that I had an ectopic pregnancy that ended up rupturing 3 years ago, and we've been trying to have a baby ever since. I lost a fallopian tube and basically nearly died. I've had 2 other miscarriages since then as well. This was a very special first true Mother's Day. I was in the hospital recovering from the surgery for my ectopic pregnancy over Mother's Day 3 years ago, and my family brought me flowers and balloons to help me feel better about going through something so traumatic so close to Mother's Day. I think this is why my sister may have felt the way she did. My mom didn't get my sister anything for Mother's Day. As a result, my sister ended up throwing a fit and was yelling at us, calling us names. and I ended up yelling back that nobody owed her a Mother's Day gift because she's not a mother yet. My parents were understanding, but said I should have been less harsh. Am I the jerk? I'm not downplaying whether or not the sister may have had a traumatic experience or emotional stress, but if somebody hears about what the sister experienced 6 or 7 months go by and it's now Mother's Day, I just doubt that most people would be thinking, oh, we need to try to compensate for that experience. It might even honestly be a bit of a both sides kind of thing. I just don't really know whether it's fair for me to say how she should be feeling considering what she experienced on Mother's Day half a year later. Even Enthusiasm7223 wrote, I saw a pink line on a stick, then my life went on as normal and there was no baby. I deserve to be celebrated. Not the jerk. She put a damper on a very special day for you that you've been trying to get to for years. Congrats on your baby. This next story is, am I the jerk for celebrating Mother's Day with my mom and not staying home with my wife? There's some background to this. My wife and my mother do not get along well. It is due to their personalities. My wife is very gentle-hearted while my mother is more get crap done. There have been multiple times that my wife ended up in tears from really small things. Sometimes it's been things that the other daughter-in-laws have been confused on. It doesn't help that other women in the family have taken steps back due to this. One example is that my wife started crying after a story from when mom worked in the hospital. It really wasn't sad, but she started crying in the middle. I was here for this one, and it made me realize what the other women in the family were saying. My sister, for example, explained that she doesn't want to walk on eggshells with my wife, or she may end up crying. My mom has taken a step back since she's tired of being the bad guy and causing her to cry when she didn't do anything. She's in therapy for this, and it has helped a lot. She has better control over her emotions and got a diagnosis. The main problem, we do not have kids. Mother's Day was yesterday, so I went over to give her a gift and have dinner. I invited my wife, but she declined. I got home and she was ticked for leaving her home alone on Mother's Day. My point is that she isn't a parent, and her point was that I need to be more considerate. I can't ask people I know since they're biased, so I came here. I've honestly heard varying things from various people. I've heard people say that all women should be celebrated on Mother's Day. And obviously the other side that says only mothers should be celebrated on Mother's Day. Personally, I kind of feel like if you want to do something nice for your wife on Mother's Day, even if she's not actually a mother, you don't have kids, that's a really nice and sweet gesture. But personally, it feels kind of odd if somebody who doesn't have kids has this insistence that you are a jerk or you did something wrong because you did not celebrate them on Mother's Day. All Rise for the Verdict wrote, not the jerk. The way I did not see that twist coming with the no kids part. You did nothing wrong. There was nothing to be more considerate about on your end. You went to celebrate your mom. I would also argue it was a bit inconsiderate of her to expect you to spend Mother's Day with her and also declined dinner with your mother. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not moving my car only because my neighbors have kids? I, 36-year-old female living in London, where we have residential parking on the street. Recently, I parked my car in front of my next-door neighbor's house as the spot in front of my own house was already occupied. I usually park my car wherever I can find space, as there's no personal parking space for anyone. When my neighbors returned home, they parked their car on the other side of the street, just 5 meters further away from their house than usual. They knocked on my door and asked me to move my car somewhere else, although they knew that we can park anywhere on the street. They explained that they have kids, and it's too far for them to carry their children when they're asleep. I refused to move my car as I pay for the parking and I also have the right to park anywhere. However, my neighbors were not happy that the car was not parked in front of their house, and they called me names and threatened to slash my car tires. Am I the jerk for not moving my car? Update, received a call from the council asking for more details. They've recommended me to inform the police. That's exactly what I did. I think OP's not the jerk here. It's street parking. It is what it is. You're gonna upset your neighbors. They're gonna be moody and temperamental with you. It sucks you've got those kinds of neighbors next to you. Shoot, I know how that is. I hear from family who have terrible neighbors all the time about their terrible neighbors. But yeah, just report the threats to the police and park where you can legally park. Stellar Phenom 420 wrote, not the jerk, it's street parking. It is what it is. Sometimes they'll get to park in front and sometimes they won't. I hope you report their threats to the local police. At least so if it does happen, there's already a paper trail. You can file a police report without calling emergency services. Also, if you have one, your HOA or neighborhood board. This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my friend that her business proposal seems unfair to me and I don't really need her to open up an Etsy? I, 22-year-old female, like to paint and draw as a hobby. My family and friends have suggested that I opened an Etsy shop and I have considered it, but wanted to focus on my career first since I majored in something completely different, finance. My friend, 22-year-old female, has been struggling to find a job and moved towards starting a small business as a way to make money. She's considered dropshipping, Etsy, and etc. She's been trying to convince me to open up an Etsy with her by selling stickers, since I made stickers for myself and my friends for fun and they really liked it. Based on her idea, I would design and create all the stickers, while she and I would both manage the shop and sell them. We would be business partners and split the proceeds equally. I told her that I'm not interested in opening up an Etsy shop right now because I wanted to focus on my career first. But she keeps insisting and tried pushing me to create some designs to get started. She insisted that I needed a side hustle if I was going to survive in this economy, and I needed her for the administrative aspect of selling stickers. I thought about it some more, and the whole idea kinda seems unfair to me, so I told her that if we started this, it sounds like I have more responsibility than her, so the profit split seems uneven. It takes a lot of time to create designs. Technically, I wouldn't really need her to start an Etsy, since I could do the admin portion myself. I may have been the jerk for saying this because my friend's mad that I don't value her skills, and for suggesting that I would provide more value to the business because I have artistic skill. Am I the jerk? OP's not the jerk here. The admin side of things is honestly a lot easier to figure out than they're trying to sell you on it. And let's be real, without OP, they don't have a storefront. The friend may try to downplay it, but OP is the store. Bailey the Nerd wrote, "Not the jerk, OP. Your friend is trying to cash in on your artistic skills. If it was something totally out of your depth, or that you were uninterested in doing or managing yourself, then suggesting a split wouldn't be completely out of pocket. But suggesting a 50-50 split when you're doing 80% of the work is unreasonable. OP, I'm gonna point this out. You're pursuing a career in finance and were born within the last 30 years. You 100% have the skill set to manage an Etsy page entirely on your own. Your friend does not get to make demands, especially when you're not driven to start the Etsy store in the first place. Don't make the Etsy shop if you don't want to, and if you decide you want to and decide you want her involved, then make a counteroffer that's fair to you. You could 100% do this entirely on your own. It's not rocket surgery." Our next story is, am I the jerk for forcing my son to buy a more appropriate swimsuit? This happened about a week ago, but wanted to ask. My wife and I and our son Jax, 18-year-old male, went on a week-long Caribbean cruise right after his school ended. Jax is a great kid. He seems to have a confidence issue, as in too much confidence. I've never seen anything like it. He is the most self-assured guy in the world. It's not unfounded. He's great-looking and athletic and definitely a Mr. Personality type, but still, a bit goes a long way. He's also something of an exhibitionist, I think, which brings us to the problem. Usually he's so charming it seems harmless and he gets away with it, but in this case, not so. We arrive on the ship and set sail, and Jax gets ready to head off to one of the pools for the first time. Let's just say his swimsuit was not appropriate at all. Definitely a flaunt it type of suit. I told him to put on something else. He had nothing. The kid had packed nothing but those for a week-long cruise. What was he thinking? I told him he had to go to one of the onboard stores and buy something else. He protested. I won. He went to a store and came back and got ready to go again, but he had bought another Speedo-style suit that was a lot better than what he had before, but still not appropriate. And of course, he couldn't return a swimsuit. I told him to go back, buy a proper suit like trunks or boardy shorts or whatever, which he reluctantly did. He whined about it, begged to wear his original, but I said no. As I said, I have to admire his confidence, as he would have no issue being at the pool like that. He is a shameless flirt, but there's a time and place. He was mad at me and said I made him waste $100 plus on 2 new suits he didn't need. He didn't exactly call me a jerk, but he wasn't happy. I didn't want to ruin his vacation, but I wanted him to be decent. So am I the jerk and should I just have let him wear what he wanted? So I'm gonna admit, I looked at the image OP linked to this post, and I would just describe what he was originally going to wear as something that definitely accentuates a certain area, and also all of the fabric except the most critical of areas are apparently sheer when wet, see-through. So I mean, he wanted to walk around with this thing that's accentuating that area down there. Their cheeks are probably completely visible when they're wet. I don't think OP's in the wrong for saying, no, you can't wear that. The problem is when they go and they buy a Speedo from the cruise shop and they say, no, you can't wear that, they are the jerk, because it's not like you can't wear that at the cruise, they bought it on the ship. OP being uptight about that is their own problem and they are the jerk. Just gotta say, I admire the confidence too. Callie the Blaze wrote, everybody sucks here. If he was wearing that sheer when wet business, you saved him being charged with indecent exposure, and your whole family possibly being put off the ship at the next port of call. Yes, they do that when people commit a crime. But the Speedos he bought from the ship store were appropriate, and you should have accepted them. Then you'd be teaching him the line between cheeky but legal/acceptable, and things that will get you arrested. The former is something young adults should get to choose for themselves, especially in environments where they're expected, like cruises and resorts, while the latter is actually protecting him from potentially very serious legal consequences while you still have some degree of power or control. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.